So I'm spending over £120,000 to go back to school. And this is after spending more than 6 years in medical school, earning 2 bachelors and a master's degree. Hi, I'm Matthew. I'm a former medical doctor who left clinical medicine, moved into the corporate world. Now I'm spending 2 more years and over £120,000 to do an MBA. To give context and help you understand how I got here, first I need to share my story, then I'll share why I'm getting my MBA, and then I'll share how I envision the MBA fitting into my long-term plans. Chapter 1. My story. The MBA journey begins. So starting with the basics, I grew up in Kingston, Jamaica, and up until the age of around 16, I wanted to be a professional badminton player. And even though I was competing on the national team, I quickly realized that this probably wasn't going to happen based on the funding and the sort of lack of popularity of the sport in my region. So at the same time as well, I came from a family of medical doctors. So growing up in high school, I really didn't have too much of a choice of a career. I was pushed really hard into becoming a doctor. And I find it really funny because all throughout high school and eventually university, my grades were always best in math and my lowest were always in science. I then did my pre-clinical year before medical school, and that actually went really well. I studied my butt off and ended up getting a pretty big scholarship to medical school. But here is where my life sort of went downhill. I then spent the next 5 years in medical school, and honestly, I didn't really enjoy it. But based on my family pressure and having no real chance to explore other careers, I basically had to try my best to finish. Plus, I had my scholarship that I really didn't want to waste, and during medical school I actually did pretty decent. But somewhere along the lines I started to get really interested in business and investing, and during my free time that's actually where I spent most of my time and resources. But the thing was, I was so busy studying and preparing for exams that I really couldn't commit to any of these interests. Eventually time passed and I eventually graduated in 2021 as a medical doctor, and this was during the peak of the COVID pandemic. And this was a really tough time for me because during my final year and with the stress of final exams, I was so stressed that I kept having stomach ulcers, and this actually led me to started working for 6 months after I graduated to get this sorted out. And then eventually I was diagnosed with a chronic gastrointestinal issue. But during this time though, when I was recovering, I was really set on trying something new because I was like, this stress that I'm having is absolutely insane. So one thing that I looked at were master's programs within the UK to try and bridge into health tech, which I was really interested in at the time. But at that time I wasn't too sure and my family was really pressuring. So I actually did start working as a medical doctor, but honestly, I really didn't enjoy it and I couldn't see myself continuing it. So after a few months, I quit and I decided to run with my plan B. And that's when I eventually decided on Loughborough University in the UK, because at the time I was also playing semi-professional badminton. So yeah, I wanted to give Loughborough a try. And if you didn't know, Loughborough is like the biggest sporting university in the world. So their facilities are world class, and I thought this would be a great chance for me. I could train and get my degree at the same time. But during my master's, I actually focused more on my career and I was networking like crazy. I really wasn't caring that much about class, and I was just trying to speak to everyone in the industry that I wanted to get into. But lucky enough, I actually did get headhunted by a really fast-paced growing startup in Cambridge at the time. So I started working halfway through my master's part-time, and eventually when I did graduate, they gave me a full-time role and they eventually sponsored my work visa. So not only was I working non-clinically, I was learning tons and I was really enjoying it. And this is sort of the part where the MBA decision starts to look a bit strange, because on paper, this doesn't really make sense. I had already left medicine, I had a stable job, and I was learning on the job. So if I chose to do an MBA, it meant voluntarily putting myself in over 6 figures in debt with no guaranteed outcome. But at the same time, that interest of me wanting to run my own business and learn more about investing still lingered. And along the way, when I was in the UK, I met a lot of amazing people that had the roles that I wanted to do full time. And funny enough, a lot of them did have MBAs. And when I spoke to them, they said that for the kind of goals and careers that I want in the future, an MBA would be really beneficial for me, especially at the top program. So here we are today. That was the main inspiration for how I ended up applying for my MBA. I ended up studying for the GRE while working full time, prepped all my essays for around 2 years before I got admission promotion and a scholarship to my dream school, London Business School. And I thought that since I was already in the UK anyways, that school sort of just made sense. Chapter 2, why I'm getting an MBA. So to provide some context on why people get an MBA in general, in case you're unfamiliar, there are 3 main reasons. The first is career advancement. Usually people use the MBA as a way to progress or pivot their career, and a lot of senior management roles are actually locked away by this credential. So not only allows promotion, but usually a significant salary boost. So the second is networking. Usually the MBA classroom is crafted from people from a lot of different professional backgrounds with really stellar work experience. And the third is academics. If you've never been to a business class, the MBA is a great place to learn the basics of business and how to run a business, even if you don't really want to start your own business. So specifically focusing on why I wanted to do my MBA. Basically, I wanted to figure out more on what I wanted to do career-wise while still advancing, and having that clean slate so I can recruit to roles that were non-clinical was really important to me. So to summarize though, I had 3 main reasons why I applied. The first for me was the professional network. So I really wanted to broaden my professional network because coming from medicine and then health tech, my network was really too narrow in the healthcare space. Everyone around me had similar backgrounds, similar career ceilings, and the MBA felt like the first time I'll be in a real environment where I could kind of reset this entirely. And especially moving to a big city like London, where I plan to live in the foreseeable future, I thought that this would be a really good breeding ground for me. So if I ever wanted to start my own company or even join a startup with a classmate, that to me was worth the tuition alone. And even in my discovery phase, I spoke to so many people on LinkedIn or in the health tech industry, and they were so willing to share information, their experience and their career outcomes that I realized I wanted to be surrounded by like-minded people like this. So yes, I know it sounds crazy to be spending over £120,000 on just having a network, but I think the brand of having a top MBA and the ability to reach out to any alumni or professor and get a response just because you went to the same school as them is going to pay dividends in the future. The second big reason for me was a stronger career pivot. So I already made a big shift from clinical medicine into the health tech space, while at the same time I was doing this in a country I had never lived before. But even still, I wanted to further my options even more and give myself the highest career leverage and optionality. So yes, I could have continued to work for 2 more years instead of doing an MBA, but I always wanted to do my MBA and I've been thinking about it for so many years. And for me, I was really interested in the post-MBA roles and the sort of exit opportunities that you get from these roles after your MBA. So at the time I told myself I would apply to my top programs, and if I got in, then I would decide. Fast forward to now, I not only got admission to my dream program, but I also got a scholarship. So that made the decision even more easy. And whenever I had doubts, I just thought to myself that even though the MBA journey might not work out for me, I can always go back into the startup space, and at least I would have tried, and I wouldn't have the regret of not knowing if I didn't try my dream of doing my MBA. The third is the option of residency. So being that I grew up and lived in Jamaica my entire life, I always wanted to try and live in a more developed country with a lot more opportunities, and I only have a Jamaican passport, so I didn't really have a preset destination of another country I could move to. So now that I've been in the UK for almost 3.5 years, I can admit that it's not perfect, but I'm really enjoying my time here and I do want to try and stay. So part of the reason an MBA makes sense, especially at London Business School in the United Kingdom, is that I would be spending more time here building up the opportunity for citizenship. So not only am I going to get more skilled, I'm going to be building my network and increasing my career options, but also I'll have the chance for permanent residency. And I know I could have stayed on my skilled worker visa for 5 years, but being that I've already been here over 3 years, the 10-year route doesn't really seem that different now. So these are the 3 main reasons I wanted to do my MBA, and I don't necessarily think that the MBA was the only way to get to these goals, but I think the MBA is a useful tool that if I use right, it can be really helpful in these specific scenarios. So chapter 3, my long-term plans. So now that we've covered the story of why I applied to my MBA, the reason I'm getting my MBA, let me introduce you to the 3 main areas I think the MBA will help me long-term with my career and life. We're going to be looking at entrepreneurship, non-clinical career advancement, and my plans for this channel. So one of my long-term plans is entrepreneurship. And I know it sounds crazy to do an MBA to try entrepreneurship, but hear me out. Starting my own business isn't my immediate goal. And I know that this goal is not one that has a structured path, but starting my own business has always been something I wanted to do. And I want to be prepared as best as possible for it. I know the MBA isn't perfect, but at least at minimum, it will cover the academic side and really also help with the professional networking side. And with me coming from a medical background, my previous network only included persons that were focusing on their medical careers. The only entrepreneurial venture they probably thought of was starting their own clinic or practice. Not only that, my immediate network was also only based in Jamaica, so that wouldn't be that helpful in the UK. Personally, I think being immersed in an environment with other like-minded people who might also be looking at entrepreneurship is a big plus. Also, the location of being in London really does open up a lot of opportunities for starting your own business or just being in the right frame of mind. And then lastly, having that brand name behind me really does help with credibility if, for instance, I ever wanted to go for funding. Now let's speak about my non-clinical career advancement. So I already spoke about how I want to use the MBA as a clean slate for me to pivot into more corporate roles. But here I want to expound more directly on the options I want to pivot to. So if you've done research, you'll know that the clearest path for ex-doctors like myself to break in the corporate world after your MBA is usually through traditional routes like consulting, or less commonly, things like investment banking or even strategy roles at healthcare adjacent companies. My personal goals would be to pivot into the healthcare consulting route at ideally a top firm, and then try my best to pivot from that to healthcare venture capital or healthcare private equity. And if you didn't know, venture capital and private equity are notoriously known for being extremely hard to break into. That being said, I don't really see any other way that I can give myself the chance to break in other than through my MBA. So yes, I've always been interested in how funding funnels into healthcare. So hopefully I can eventually land my dream role in healthcare VC or private equity using this route. And the last thing I want to speak about is the plans for this channel. So I'm sharing all of this because I wish I had seen more honest MBA content when I was applying, especially from people from non-traditional backgrounds that didn't come from consulting or finance that wanted to do their MBA. So if you're interested more in my MBA application, how I got my scholarship, my MBA journey, how classes at London Business School are going to look, stick around. I plan to document my entire journey through business school from the perspective of a non-traditional applicant, and I'm going to share everything. I'm going to share everything I learned from actual London Business School classes, network events, and the real exit options you get after a top MBA program. So if any of that interests you, please stick around and feel free to ask me any questions on career or anything MBA. I promise that I will reply to every single one of you.